Hi, everybody. We are on Daf Tet. We'll be talking about this case here that we began speaking about yesterday. And then we're going to speak more about whether one is allowed to carry under the width of crossbeam, korah, or within the width of a lechi. And we'll see two different opinions and various proofs for and against. And on the way, we'll see a number of important principles in Eruvin. Okay, so regarding this case where one puts pegs into the side, the front of the wall, and a crossbeam, so now it's not resting on top, but rather outside the front of it. Rava said about this, Divrei ha'oser asur. All right, we had the first one opinion that said it depends. But Rava said, okay, that was the last opinion. Rava said it has to be on top of the walls of the mavoy, and here it's not, it's attached to the side, so it's simply no good. That was Rava's opinion, but now we're going to question that opinion. So now we ask a question from a baraita. The baraita says, Hayta korato mishucha or teluya. So we're going to see what these words mean. Mishucha, suspended, or drawn away or suspended. We'll see what that means. If it's less than 3, if it's less than 3 tefachim, so right now we're assuming that it means it's the same as this case above. That if it's 3 away from the wall for 3 tefachim or less than 3 tefachim, then we apply a principle called lavud. Lavud means when you have a space that's less than 3 tefachim, you make believe it doesn't exist. In other words, you make believe it's filled in, actually. So that's very important for schach. Let's say using bamboo sticks, and there's a couple of bamboo sticks missing and some empty space. It's okay. If it's less than 3 tefachim, we consider it as if it's filled in. So at less than 3, you don't have to bring another one. If it's 3 or more, tzarich lavi korah acheret. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, pachot me'arba'a, and tzarich lavi korah acheret. Arba'a, tzarich lavi korah acheret. Rashbag says the principle of lavud works even for 4 tefachim. So in general, that would be more mekel, because now you can fill in more space. All right, but either way, my lav, mishucha mibachus utula mibifnim. What does mishucha mean? Isn't that talking about our case? I have some fancy pictures here for you. All right, isn't it talking about our case, the same as Rava, where it's in front, the picture on the previous page? It says no, and teluya means inside, like this case. It says no, lo, idi v'idi mibifnim, mishucha meroch achat utula meroch b'shtei ruchot. To say mishucha means that it's suspended on one side, and teluya, meaning hanging totally, means it's suspended on both sides. And so you need lavud on this side and a lavud on this side. If it's less than 3 tefachim here and less than 3 tefachim here, then it's considered all straight, all there, and that would be okay. So therefore, this is not a proof against Rava. Rava could still maintain that if it's totally in front, then it's no good. Why do we need these two cases? I mean, we have the principle of lavud. And you might have thought that lavud could only work on one side. You're going to apply one lavud to one beam, but you might have thought you can't do it on both sides. And so therefore, that baraita comes to teach that even in this case, you can apply lavud on both sides. Good. Rav Asher Amad, mishucha v'hi teluya. Rav Asher interpreted this baraita differently. He said it's talking about a case like this. The picture here is clearer. Mishucha v'hi teluya. So it's away from the wall in 2 directions, both horizontally and vertically. It's higher than the rest, than the top of the wall, and being suspended there. So it's not either or, but both mishucha and teluya. You put 2 bent pegs, crooked pegs in the 2 walls. In both directions, it's less than 3. This way is less than 3, and this way is less than 3. How about the hypotenuse? That might be more than 3, right? But it doesn't matter. We want to apply, we want to apply some form of lavud this way, and we'll see what we do the other way. Maudatema or lavud amrinan or havut amrinan. Lavud v'havut la amrinan. Kamash matlan. Now we have a new concept called havut. Havut is a little bit different than lavud. Havut means we bring it down. We assume, even though this is floating up here, we bring it down to this height, the height of the wall. Havut. That's different from lavud, because lavud says we fill it in. We make believe that it's filled into the side. But that won't help here, because I need to. There's nothing to fill it in next to. There's nothing. There's nothing down here that I can use to fill it in. And if I just have lavud extending out here, then it's not connected to anything either. So you need to bring it imaginatively, bring it down, and then also extend it sideways. So I might have thought that, yes, havut is a general principle and we can use it. Havut is a general principle, I can use it, but I might have thought I have to use them separately, because like, how is it going to work over here? So therefore this baraita comes and says, this scenario is permitted and you could do it this way and that way. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yep.
Do you think lavut comes from the word levitate? Like related to the word to like elevate?
No, well no, I don't think so, because that would be more the concept of havut. Lavut seems to me like it means nullified, not important.
And is chavut related to the word habit?
I was thinking like, habit v'la barich, right? We bang it down onto the ground. Yeah, so I think that is related to that word. Okay, good. So Kamash Malan, so Rav Ashi interpreted that way. According to either interpretation, it's not talking about the case of Rava. So Rava stands in his opinion that case where it's all the way in front is no good. Okay, now we get to the next topic, which we've been dealing with a lot, of that space under the korah, or between the lechi, or next to the lechi. Can you carry within that space? Not sure why it was so important to carry within that little space, but actually we'll see now sometimes it was bigger. Taneh, Rabbi Zakai, Kameh, the Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan, the famous second generation, right, early Amora. Rabbi Zakai taught the following baraita in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Ben lechayayim v'tachat hakorah nidon kekarmelit. Either way, whether you have a korah, all the space under it, or one, here it says 2 lechis, but even 1 lechi, the space across from the lechi, all that is like karmelit, and therefore prohibited from carrying. When Rabbi Yochanan heard that, he said, Amar le puk taneh lebara. He said, get out of here, right? Go and teach that outside. In other words, this baraita is not acceptable as halacha. It's not a correct tradition. Okay, so he said, go take your baraita and teach it somewhere else, not here. Okay, this is the source, bara. This is the source of the word baraita, right? It's something that is outside. This is really even less. This is usually a baraita has some authority and we accept it, but this one is a rejected baraita. Okay, so what do we see from here? From the fact that Rabbi Yochanan rejected this baraita means he disagrees with it. Rabbi Yochanan thinks one is allowed to carry. I don't know which part he's rejecting, but let's assume he's rejecting both of it because he rejects the whole thing. So Rabbi Yochanan says one can carry under and on the side of korah or lechi. Now we have a machloket about this. Amar Abaye, mistabera milteh de Rabbi Yochanan tachat hakorah. I agree with Rabbi Yochanan regarding the korah, whatever is under it. That's this discussion we had yesterday. What do you consider the korah? We went through 2 different scenarios. But fine, Rabbi Yochanan says that's okay. Aval ben lechayayim asur, but between the lechi, between the side posts, that area or the width of the side post should be prohibited. It seems a lechi is much more like an imaginary wall, and so it's prohibited. Rava Amar ben lechayim nameh mutar. Rava says I agree with Rabbi Yochanan totally, and I think the whole area, even with the lechi, is permitted. Okay, so Abaye is stringent with the lechi. Rava is lenient regarding the lechi. Now each one is going to bring a proof, try to bring a proof, and we'll discuss it. How do I know that one is permitted to carry in the area next to the side post? מקום שאין בו 4 מותר לבני רשות הרבים, לבני רשות היחיד לחטף עליו, ובלבד שלא יחליפו. So here, this is a case like this. You have a private domain or mavoy, and you have a reshut harabim here, and you have these items here, these little posts, and each one is smaller than 4 by 4. This is called makom patur. This is very important. This is applicable in all halakha today. You have a small thing like a fire hydrant or something, right? It's less than 4 by 4. It's called makom patur. And the law of makom patur is that someone out from outside, they can rest their bag on it, right? And they adjust, and then they can continue carrying it, even if it's in the middle of the reshut harabim. You can put things down there and take things. Also, if this one happens to be on the border, if you're in the reshut hayachid, you can go there and rest something on it and then take it back. That's okay. But what you can't do is take it from here, put it on here, and then someone else come and take that and take it to the reshut harabim. That looks like you're transferring, right? Even though it rests on a permitted spot, you still can't do that. So in this case, we're making an analogy that this makom patur is similar to the front edge of a mavoy where you put the lehi. And so since this is a place where it's permitted, right? So doesn't that mean also that the front part of the lehi is permitted? So Rava said this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and so look, there you go. Makom she'efes doesn't have 4 by 4. Reshut harabim and the reshut yachid can use it, but shelo chalifu. You can't move it from one and then to the makom patur and then to the other. But if you're in the reshut yachid, you can make use of that area. So isn't that the same? Abaye says no. In that case, this thing is sticking up 3 tefachim at least. So it's a designated area that's clearly marked off. Whereas in the case of mavoy, right, like this, you have an area here, it's not raised. And so I'm just walking and I'm put something and then I start carrying around in here, put something down here, then that's a problem because this area is not marked off. So he doesn't think that the makom patur fire hydrant that's over here is not similar to the area next to the lehi. And so he rejects that proof. All right, so how about Abaye? Let's see if he can do better with his proof. Amar Abaye, again, Abaye is the one that said it's prohibited from carrying in that area between the lechi and the other wall. If you have a case like this where you have a large foyer area, here's the main mavoy, but unlike a usual case where the walls go straight, here the walls come inside. Now this wall that juts in is itself a lechi, right? Because here's the mavoy, main part of the mavoy, and this is considered a lechi for the mavoy. So if you only had this, that would be okay to carry in this area. The problem is that when this, within this area, see now this area is 4 by 4, it becomes important in itself. If you want to carry within this area, the statement of Rav says you need a second lechi, a lechi for the lechi, right? This is a lechi itself, and this is a lechi on the lechi. So if you want to carry in this area, you need a lechi. Presumably, you could carry in this area, but not in the few inches that this takes up, right along the border. So what do you see from here? It seems pretty clear that one is not allowed to carry in the area across from the next to the lechi. Okay, so that seems like good proof. Maybe that case only is prohibited because it's 4 by 4. So now it created its own area. You can't say that because Rav said even if that space is smaller than 4 by 4, you would still need a lechi. If it's 2 by 2 and you want to use that, so bring a lechi that's less. That's half of that, or just a lechi can be very small, and that way you would be able to carry there. So you see that, and according to this, one is not allowed to carry. So Abaye brought this proof, in the name of Rav, so he's of great stature, and so, all right, it's prohibited. Sounds like a good proof. How's Rava gonna reject this? But Rava says, Hatam de patuach lecharmelit. That case is talking about where this area is not a Reshut Rabim, and so, but rather a Karmelit. But in fact, the usual case of Reshut Rabim would be allowed. But if it's a Karmelit here, then he agrees that this is not allowed. Now you should be making a face, right? What do you mean if it's a Karmelit? Right, if this is a Karmelit, then I'm not allowed to carry here. But if this is Reshut Rabim, I am allowed to carry here. It should be the opposite, right? Reshut Rabim is going to be, going from Reshut Yachid to Reshut Rabim, that's going to be the Oraita. So there, I should say, all the more so, this space would be prohibited, not the other way around. So this seems to be strange that he's getting out of this by assuming that the prohibition is only with the Karmelit, and he sticks to his own opinion that Reshut Rabim, it's allowed. So the Talmud asks that exact question. So if that area, foyer area is open to Sharabim, then it's allowed. And we have a nice statement saying, the citizen, right, the resident of the country should be on the ground, while the immigrant, Giora, right, the immigrant is up in the penthouse. Right, it doesn't make sense. The immigrant should not be treated better than the citizen. Okay, this sounds like it could be a campaign slogan. But what we mean here is that right, this area, if you consider it like more similar, right, this show the if it's a more similar to this, then it should have a better status. That's like being a citizen rather than being a stranger. If it's Reshut Rabim, it's completely different. Okay, so that seems to be a good question. And he says, yes, in Masa min et mino v'ne'or. That is a good principle. And he brings an analogy to the laws of kashrut, where, let's say you have some milk, a little bit of milk falls into meat. That's okay, right? Because there's no taste. Then a little bit more milk, then more milk, okay? Eventually, min and mina, if it's the same thing, milk and milk, it'll find each other and it'll reawaken, and eventually when you have more milk that gives, enough milk that gives taste, then it's gonna come together. So things that are similar attract, whereas if you have milk falls in and then blood falls in, something else falls in, those things aren't gonna come together. Maybe another analogy is like, if you don't want your kids to, your son to intermarry, right? So would you send them to a summer camp in a different country where they speak a different language? So maybe you'd feel comfortable because there's no way he's going to marry anybody there. It's completely different. But would you send him to somewhere nearby that's a similar community and same language, the same culture? Well, then you wouldn't, because it's too similar, and then they might lead to mixed dancing. Right, so that's the idea here. If this is a Reshut Rabim, then it's so different. I don't have to be. I can permit. It would be permitted here, and the Reshut Rabim is so different. It's like a different world altogether, and so this is permitted. Whereas when this is Karmelit, it's very similar. So then I have to have an extra precaution. So that's how Rava would explain this topic. Okay, good. Amar le Rav Huna bere le Rav Yoshua le Rava. Ve'at latis berat ben nechayayin asur. So we're challenging Rava again. Says, really, you don't think that the area between the two lechis is a problem? Amar Rabba bar Hana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The name of Rabbi Yochanan. Mavoy shel retzafo belechayayin pachot me'arba'a. So we have a case like this where you didn't put just one lechi, but you put a whole series of lechis, right, all across one side. Maybe a design, a kind of lattice, whatever reason the person did it. But strangely enough, having all these lechis is going to make our problems worse, not better, by having multiple lechis. So Yochanan said, when you do this, then the outcome will depend on what you think about Rabban Rashbag and Rabbanan. The same machloket we just had, whether you say labud is 3 or 4. We'll explain. The Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel damar amrinan labud v'ishtamesh ad chodo penimi shel lechi penimi. point about Rashbag, who says even up to 4 you say lavud. So even if these are between up to 4 apart, each one, so you consider them lavud. All the space between each one is nothing, and therefore you consider it as if it's one big lechi. And because it's one big lechi, you cannot carry within this whole area only until, right, you can only carry from the mavoy until the corner here, the beginning, because this is all considered one. Whereas according to Rabbanan, lavud, well, they say they do say lavud, but only up to 3. So let's assume that this is 3.5 between each one. So they would not consider this lavud because it's 3.5, and so therefore the rest of these poles are not significant halachically. Only the first one here is lechi, and so you cannot carry. You can only carry to the inside edge of the first pole. You cannot carry beyond the inside edge of the first pole. Okay, so it is interesting because here's a case where Rashbag would cause a chumrah by having a larger allowance for lavud. Okay, but either way, but the point is that according to either way, you're not allowed to carry within the space of the lechi, whether it be this one lechi or all the lechis, it's not allowed. And this was a statement said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So what are you going to do with that, Rava? So Rava says, oh, that also, that Rabbi Yochanan only says prohibited when it's open to a karmelit in front, but if it's a Reshut Rabim, that would be okay. What, really, Rava? You think if it's Reshut Rabim will be okay? The one that's a citizen, you're going to put on the low floor, and the Giora, you're going to give him the penthouse and treat him even better. You're going to treat a karmelit better than, so you're going to treat a Reshut Rabim better than a karmelit. He says, yes, in masamin et mino v'ne'or. Again, the same answer, that one thing that's too similar, we have to add an extra protection. Okay, good. So Rava was now able to respond to this statement of Rabbi Yochanan in one way. To review what we saw in Daf Tet Amud Aleph, we saw that Rava says that the space in front of a lechi, all across to the other side, one is permitted to carry in that space. And we asked a question from him, to him, from a statement of Rabbi Yochanan, who said the following words: "Mavoy sheletzafo b'lechayayin pachot pechot me'arba'a." That in the case where I put multiple lechis, each spaced less than 4 tefachim apart, then that case will depend on the machloket between Rashbag and Rabbanan about how big lavud is. If he says it depends on that case, it sounds like if you do say lavud and put them all together, then there'll be a problem of carrying in the space. And that indicates that when you make a large lechi like that, then you cannot carry, and that's a challenge to Rava, who says you can carry in front of a lechi. So on Amud Aleph we saw one answer, but on Amud Bet, Rav Ashi gives a second answer, and he adds something to the case. Rav Ashi amar kigon sheresafo bilchayim pachot me'arba'a. That's exactly Rabbi Yochanan's words. And then he adds b'meshach 4 amot, and you do that for 4 amot into the lechi, into the mavoy. The Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel damar amrin lavud havele mavoy v'sarich lechi acher lehatiro. Rabbanan damre la amrin lavud lo sarich lechi acher lehatiro. So the case is like this, where assume that this is 4 amot or more into the lechi, and these are each 3.5 tefachim apart. According to Rashbag, who says you can say lavud up to 4 tefachim, then this is all considered one whole lechi. And because of that, when you have a big lechi that goes 4 amot, then it causes a different problem altogether, that this space becomes a mavoy in and of itself, separate from the rest of the mavoy, because it has a new wall here. And because it's a new mavoy, a separate mavoy, that's why you are not allowed to carry in that area. That's why Rabbi Yochanan says one may not carry in that area. But for Rabbanan, who says to say that it's all separate and there's only one lechi, in that case, this no mavoy is created, and you just have one small lechi, and in that case, you can carry even in the space of that lechi. So that's how Rava could reconcile himself with the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. And so the problem created with this big lechi is a different problem altogether of creating a new mavoy, but just a simple lechi one can carry in front of it. And that's how we answer that question. But now that we brought this up, we're going to ask a question from a different an angle altogether. And that angle is as follows. Usually a mavoy sticks out. Most often it sticks out both ways, a little bit here, a little bit there. Imagine you had only one stick here. And it's visible both from those coming from the mavoy and from people outside. You see that there is a vertical pole that's not part of the wall that's sticking out, so it's noticeable. But as a machloket that we're going to analyze much more detail on the continuation of the daf and the next daf, which is what if it's visible only from one side or another? So, for example, in this scenario, it's visible from someone on the outside. But in this scenario, it would be visible from someone in the mavoy. You could see that there is something jutting out. There's a pole there, but someone from outside would not be able to see it. Whereas in this case, someone from inside will look flush against the wall. Only someone from the outside would notice that there is a pole there. So in a case where it can be seen from the inside, everyone agrees that's a good lechi, because primarily it's meant as a symbolic wall to be seen from the people inside, that they will extend it, and so that they will not come to carry out. So this would be good according to all opinions. But in a case like this, that would be a question of whether this is a machloket, whether this is permitted or not. So now go back to our case. Generally, people do leave it sticking out a bit, and it will be seen from outside. So therefore, what we're going to ask is, according to Rashbag, who does say lavud and makes this all into one wall, and then you have a mavoy, and in order to carry in this new mavoy, you need another lechi. Wait, hold on. Why would you need another lechi? Can't this part that juts out of the wall serve as a lechi, right? Because it can be seen for those going out. That is the next question. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel damar amdinan lavud hava le mavoy v'ser lechel hatiro. Right. So you need a new lechi, and for Rabbanan you don't. And now we ask, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel levekenid emi bachos v'shaveh mibifnim. Then there should be a case that you can see it from outside, but not from the inside. And well, presumably that would be therefore okay, and you don't need another lechi. We reject that because, remember, the one that's seen from outside is subject to a machloket. Midu tama ela Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan's the one that brought up this whole scenario in the first place and said, this scenario where you have many lechis and we make them lavud, that is subject to a machloket. So since this whole scenario follows Rabbi Yochanan, we have a tradition, Rabbi Yochanan said, that this case where it can only be seen from the outside, not from the inside, Rabbi Yochanan thinks that that is not a proper lechi. It has to be able to be seen from the inside. And therefore, that's why in this case, even according to Rashbag, who says you put these all together, and this creates a mavoy, and you can't carry the mavoy unless you have a lechi, this, for the Rabbi Yochanan's scenario, would not be good because it cannot be seen from the inside, right? Because it all looks like it's flush with this wall that extends for amot. Okay, so we solved that problem. But now that we brought up this topic of a lechi that's visible from only the inside or the outside, we're going to analyze this further. And it's subject to a machloket. Itemar. If it can be seen from the inside, everyone agrees that that is a good lechi. But if it can only be seen from the outside, right? But it's flush coming from the wall inside. It'd be chiyav, it'd be shimon, but it'd be hadamar nidon mishum lechi, hadamar eno nidon mishum lechi. So these two sages, early Amoraim, they have machloket. We're not sure who says which, who permits and who doesn't, but we're going to figure it out. tistayem de Rabbi Chaya, hu de'amar nidon mishum lechi. Rabbi Chaya must be the one who is mekel, who is lenient and says that in such a case like this, where it can be seen from the outside but not from the inside, he must be the one that says it's permitted. Why? Because he repeated the following baraita: Detana Rabbi Chaya, kotel shesido ehad kanus mehavero, pen shenirem bachutz v'shaveh mibifnim, pen shenirem mibifnim v'shaveh mibachutz, nidon mishum lehi tistayem. Because he described two parallel cases where the wall is not even, doesn't come to an even corner. So if there's something jutting out from the wall on this side, and therefore this can be seen from here, but not from the inside, or it's a case where it juts out this way, it's something, or there's something lacking in the wall here, and so it juts out from the inside, but from the outside you cannot see it. Rabbi Chaya, in this baraita that he quotes, says that it's called a lechi in both ways. And so you see this is parallel to the cases of when it can be seen inside or only outside. And Rabbi Chaya quotes this baraita that says it's permitted. So you see that he is the one that is lenient in this machloket that we cited. And the other sage, Shimon ben Abi, must be the one who is stringent. All right, good. So Tistayim, we concluded that. We just want to clarify a little bit further, because Rabbi Yochanan, Mila Shemi'a Leha, wait, didn't Rabbi Yochanan know this baraita also? And so why wouldn't he agree with it, this baraita? And we say that Rabbi Yochanan agreed that it's permitted, even though just above we have a tradition that Rabbi Yochanan was mahmir on such a lechi that can only be seen from the outside. But Rabbi Yochanan knew this baraita, so what do we do with that? Yeah, maybe he heard it, but he didn't agree with it. He had a different tradition. Well, Rabbi Chaya nameh la sabar. Well, if you're going to say that about Rabbi Yochanan, say that about Rabbi Chaya also. Maybe Rabbi Chaya heard of the tradition, but maybe he didn't agree with it. How do you know that he just because? How do you know that just because he heard it that he agrees with it? Hi, my wait, this is not comparable. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan la sabar la mishum hachi la tanela. Rabbi Yochanan, we never taught this tradition, right? He actually, we have a tradition that said it's not permitted. He never taught that baraita. Ella Rabbi Chaya, ita de la sabar la lamale limitna. But Rabbi Chaya did teach that baraita, and so therefore, since Rabbi Chaya taught that baraita, it means he must agree that that is a correct baraita. And so, right, so lots of people, with the Amoraim heard lots of baraitot. And if they just passively listen to it and don't accept and don't repeat it, then we can assume that they did not agree with it. But Rabbi Chaya here did agree with it, did repeat it, and therefore he must actually agree with it. And so the next line we're going to have Rabba bar Rav Huna, who agrees with Rabbi Chaya and says Nir'em b'chutz v'mifnim nidon mishum lechi. He also permits and says that this is okay. We're going to ask a question on this statement. Those who permit, we're going to have a long question from a Mishnah later on, Mishnah in Perek Tet. But this is going to be a longer discussion that's going to flow into the next daf. So we will continue that in tomorrow's discussion.